You didn't know I was coming? Come on. Who did not know that was coming? Rick, come on, Kurt. You know the risk of inviting me to the podium. And then wait till you hear what's coming. Well, Rotarians and guests, John, thank you very much for allowing me the privilege of introducing today's guest speakers. And as you can see, I've been out of uniform now, retired about 6 years ago. And you can take the boy out of the uniform, but you can't take the Army out of the boy. You just can't do it. Every day of my life, I have a little bit of hula left in my body. And every once in a while, when you give me the microphone, I'm going to let it out. Today, our distinguished speakers are Lieutenant Colonel Nikki, Griffin, and partnering with her is Colonel Mengis. Lieutenant Colonel Griffin and Colonel Mengis are both currently students at the United States Army War College, Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. This morning was the first time I actually ever met either one of our distinguished guests, but within minutes of knowing them, within minutes of seeing their uniform, you learn something about the people that you meet. You learn something about men and women in uniform. First, they're both professional soldiers, and they have committed their lives, dedicated their lives to service to our nation. They have achieved great success at all levels of command. Had they not achieved those levels of success, they would not be attending the Army War College at Carlisle Barracks. I know that these two officers are the best of our nation's military vets, and they were selected to attend the Army War College because of their accomplishments and through a very competitive selection process. They and I, we've walked similar paths. We've served in the same theater of operation. We've had the honor of leading soldiers. However, each of them has far exceeded my personal accomplishments, and they really are absolute credits to their craft. They really do represent the best of the best. Lieutenant Colonel Griffin and Colonel Mengis represent the current generation of our nation's veterans. It's absolutely an honor for me to be able to participate in the parade of veterans coming in, to kind of join the previous generations and then hopefully leave something for subsequent generations. But they are volunteer soldiers who've been engaged in the global war on terrorism for over 10 years. In that time, they've deployed and redeployed. They've sacrificed time away from family. They've missed birthdays. They've missed holidays. They really have borne the burden of our nation's resolve. When I meet soldiers and officers of their caliber, I am reassured, and I'm supremely confident actually that today's military is indeed the best trained, the best led military force in the history of our nation. They carry on the tradition of all veterans, and they proudly wear the uniform of soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Griffin and Colonel Mengis, we Rotarians, we appreciate your service, and we are so very grateful for your presence with us today. Now, I'd like to know by a show of hands, how many Rotarians, how many visitors either previously served at Carlisle Barracks, attended or participated in the War College in any way. Please just raise your hand. And our two guests as well, right? Okay, so this is my Carlisle coin right here. This is my commander's coin right here that I got from the commander for serving in Carlisle. So you can coin, and if you can show me your coin, you can show me your coin. Did you bring your coin, sir? Sam Adams Oktoberfest from each of you would be delightful. Okay, so anytime. You never know, burst. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute honor to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Nikki, Griffin and Colonel Mengis.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, actually. I just want to, we're going to play a short video here first, but I wanted to know how privileged it just is such a privilege for us. We're gonna stick on the message here today. I'm going to apologize up front. I'm a third-generation veteran, and there are a few things that bring me down close to tears. It's not going to happen. But so I'm going to try to stick to my script today. You'll see Colonel Mengis is very comfortable with this environment, but I think we have some good messages here today, and it's clear that, you know, what you do and what we do, we feel like, you know, we're both values-based and service organizations, and we built a connection right away when we walked in. So before we start, I just want to recognize, of course, we have the honor today, Congressman-elect Scott Perry. And I wanted to take a moment again to recognize the veterans in the room. If you would just stand up. All right, we'll give them a hand. Okay. Now, if you're a Rotarian, stand up. Are you calling yourself a Rotarian? Is that what you are? If you're a Rotarian, okay, stand up. Now give them a hand. So at the end of the day, my goal was to have everybody standing. So if you know somebody who served in the military, if you have a sister, brother, friend, we have a connection. We are service-minded, value-based organizations, and it's in the Army that we say that's how we roll. Okay, so I'm going to just have them play a really short video here so we can start this out. I'm going to start with a joke, but I'm not going to joke.
All that I can be.
share with you one of the most precious and sacred days our nation celebrates, some with tears of joy and some with tears of sorrow, Veterans Day. Colonel Mengis and I are here today to convey the message that America is strong and resilient in her resolve to keep the nation strong and free. We will honor our veterans, and we'll also talk about the health of the force and how our institution is ensuring the care of our force, our wounded warriors, our veterans, and their families. Next slide, please. One more, please. There we go. This is why we're here today. This just outlines some of the things that the Army is doing right now. What we want you to know, the Army is the strength of the nation, and our soldiers are the strength of the Army. We're supporting our soldiers and Army veterans requires a team approach by the Army, our government, and the local community. The Army is committed to ensuring the lifelong success for our soldiers, veterans, and their family by connecting them with opportunities for employment, education, health care after military service. The Army is also working with DoD, Labor, Veterans Administration, local communities to transition and reintegrate soldiers into civilian communities. Next slide, please. Here are the 3 messages that we're going to go through today, and then also just give you an idea about what the health of our force looks like right now. And that means post-deployment, how are we taking care of our warriors, PTSD, MTBI, the brain injuries, those sometimes silent injuries that we don't see. I'd like to start out today by quoting one of our nation's most prolific leaders, President Kennedy. He once said, "A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also the men it honors, the men it remembers." For the last century, we have celebrated our Veterans Day on this day. When the cannons of World War I were silenced, we thought we had fought the war to end all wars. But as history proved, we still needed our soldiers. The nation owes a great debt to its veterans, whose service to the nation spans every decade, every year, every day of the country's existence. Through untold courage and sacrifice, American veterans have secured the liberty which our founding fathers sought to establish here in the New World. Whenever and wherever the nation has called, Americans' veterans have been there. Veterans have proudly carried the torch of liberty for all of those to see. Through the centuries, America has been a symbol to the world, a symbol of a higher ideal. Millions of people around the globe still look to America for the hope and promise of something better. And just as the nation has depended on its veterans in the past to fulfill that hope and secure that sacred promise, we shall surely depend on them as we move into the challenging but bright future which awaits us. Peace, though fragile as fine china, is often rocked from hands once strong enough to toil the anvil of war. We are here to celebrate the strength, courage, and dedication of our veterans, who have not only wielded the hammer of conflict, but also shaped the world for lasting peace. The brave actions of our veterans endure the pages of history. Today, I want us not to remember their gallantry on the battlefield. We must look at the lasting legacy of strength and service that they brought with them when they returned home. If you walk away remembering 3 things, you will understand what our veterans do for this nation and what we can do to help them. First, our soldiers, our veterans, are soldiers for life. Absolutely. During their careers and their lives, you can see this throughout history. They continue to improve their skills, ensuring they remain strong for themselves, their families, their communities, and their nation. Second, the Army is committed to lifelong success for our soldiers, veterans, and their families by connecting them with opportunities for employment, education, and post-healthcare military service. Finally, we can't do this alone. Supporting our soldiers and Army veterans requires a team approach by the Army, the government agency, and the local communities. We are serving strong. First a soldier for life. It takes a profound strength to wear the nation's uniform. Though one day they remove the uniform, no amount of time nor strife can sever the golden thread uniting these veterans in a unique and everlasting bond. Once a soldier for life. This uniform has changed many times in the last 237 years. What hasn't changed has been the determination and spiritual strength of the men and women willing to serve this nation. The images of veterans, however, has changed. Almost half of those serving in the military today are between 22 and 30 years old. Today, America has the largest population of young veterans since the Vietnam War. We are near the conclusion of combat operations in Afghanistan. The Army will get smaller over the next 5 years. More than 130,000 soldiers will leave the Army this year, and more than 500,000 by the year 2017. But as they follow in the proud footsteps of men and women who have served the Army and then served their communities, they bring with them uncommon and unwavering strength common to our veterans. After World War II, 15.7 million veterans returned home, and many feared the possibility of not having a job when they returned. In 1944, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Servicemen's Readjustment Act. We know that today as the GI Bill. More than half of all veterans used the educational benefits. In fact, 3 years after it was passed, veterans made up 49% of all college admissions. Drawing from their experience in the military, these students earned a reputation for their unwavering commitment to learning. But these veterans were not alone in their efforts. The public rallied around the veterans, and employers were eager to hire them. A professor of management at Pepperdine University School of Business and Management said, as traumatic and devastating as World War II was in terms of loss of life, those that came back alive were heroes. If there was a choice to make, the veteran would be the one who was hired. Veterans proved themselves more than capable of not just adjusting to their new civilian roles, they were excelling. By 1965, veterans made an average of 60% more than civilians. The veteran unemployment rate was about half that of civilians, and the veteran children were more likely to attend college as well. By Vietnam, the strength of our soldiers and our veterans had not changed. What had changed was the public's attitudes toward them. That generation remembers returning home from a war to a country so divided and so distracted by internal politics, the public had little interest in what our veterans had been doing for the nation. These attitudes and misunderstandings about the veterans during the Vietnam War sadly limited the potential success of many members of one of our greatest generations of heroes. The Army is working with DoD. Every one of our soldiers, veterans, and families deserve to be applauded for their strength, devotion, and service to this nation. Though we came here today to thank them for their service, we know they deserve so much more. They deserve every opportunity to use skills, knowledge, and leadership and experience gained during their time in the military. That brings me to my second point. The Army is totally committed to doing that. The Army is working with Departments of Defense, Labor, Veterans Administration, and local communities to transition and reintegrate soldiers and Army veterans into civilian life. Our President is leading the charge. I can say that, can't I? Good. Earlier this year, the President signed the Vow to Hire Heroes Act, giving tax credits to businesses that hire unemployed and disabled vets. In August last year, President Obama directed the DoD and VA to redesign the military's Transition Assistance Program, the first time this has been done in over 20 years. These changes are designed to assist separating soldiers to successfully transition to the civilian workforce, start a business, or pursue training and higher education. In the Army, there are multiple efforts to improve the transition process, including changes to the Army Career Alumni Program, the Hero to Higher Employment Application, Employer Partnership for Armed Forces, and the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. Our soldiers, veterans, and families have given so much. It is our sacred duty to maintain their trust and faith and remind them that they will always remain the strength of the Army and the strength of our nation. Once a soldier for life. Throughout their lives, the men and women live by a professional ethos that is served. I will never accept defeat. I will never leave a fallen comrade behind. These men and women are willing to toil and sacrifice for the small band of brothers who stand unwavering to their left and right. They draw their courage from the wellspring of our history and from the legacy of strength they have inherited from those who have marched tirelessly before them. But these soldiers, our veterans, don't see themselves as brave and special. They're just doing their job. Since the attacks on September 11th, almost 3 million American men and women have answered the nation's call to arms, to serve their nation and to do their job. Now, after 11 years of war, more than 1.3 million servicemen and women who deployed overseas have returned to our communities. But still, more than 720,000 veterans of all generations remain unemployed. The numbers are getting better, but we still have a long way to go. We must use the team approach. When young people join the Army, they join a special team, a unique and honored family. When they train, they don't train alone. When they deploy, they have a battle buddy, a squad, a platoon, and a battalion. Everything they do is with a team and for a team. In fact, soldiers spend very little time alone. Our soldiers and our veterans should never have to struggle alone as they transition to civilian life. Once a soldier for life. That brings me to my final point. Supporting our soldiers and veterans requires a team approach by the Army, the government agencies, and local communities like yours. We can't do this alone. Just as a nation rallies for the troops in a time of war, the actual country must rally for its veterans during times of peace. On Veterans Day, Remembrance Day, Armistice Day, and the Day of Peace, this day has many names. The world stops in silence to pay tribute to the heroes of the battlefield who have never seen themselves as heroes. To that I say, we owe veterans more than our silence, our memory, our thanks. President Kennedy once said, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. I will be followed by Mengis, who will highlight in terms of the health of the force and where we're at right now and where we're going.
Okay, I'm going to start out with a video. If we could go to the video, don't play it just yet. I'd like to introduce the video to you and maybe think about a few things when you watch this. One, just how young those soldiers are in the video. And two, I'd like to point out to you, if you think about the 4 questions that the Rotarians have, and the selfless service, which is your motto, service before self, I would like you to think about that when you watch this. This is our soldiers' creed. This is what our soldiers and military members live by.
Yeah, we all want to fight the same fight. Be willing to accept other people for who they are, regardless of their beliefs or their upbringing. We can work with every culture, we can work with every nationality. We need to work as one.
The soldier's creed.
I'm an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I'm a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and their honor and values. I will always place the mission first. I will always place the mission first. I will never set a defeat. I will never quit. I will never quit.
I will never quit. I will never give up on the combat.
I'm physically tough. Training, proficient in my warrior captain drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself.
I'm desperate and expectant.
I stay ready to deploy.
Engage in the story of the United States of America in close combat. I am the guardian of freedom in the American land flag.
Okay. I think that represents basically what our soldiers do and what we ask them to do. And I link that to what Rotarians do as well. And I was hoping I could come before you today and say, hey, I met my wife through Rotarian club, but I didn't. But I do have a relationship. My wife was lucky enough after graduating from college, she got a scholarship from the Rotary Club to go to Belgium and learn French. And we actually have maintained a relationship with the families that she stayed with while she was there. They came to our wedding, and we've been to visit them in Belgium twice. So I would like, she asked me to pass that forward to you, and thank you for that, for her winning that scholarship. I didn't get a scholarship when I graduated from anything, so so here I am. I wanted to start with a little story. I have it on good measure from my grandfather, who was a command sergeant major in the Army, that this is true. And my father, who retired as a colonel, might say it's not true, but there were these 3 prisoners of war. A colonel, like me, a young second lieutenant, and a command sergeant major. And the enemy came to him and said, we're going to execute you tomorrow by firing squad, and you each get one last wish and we will grant it. The colonel, he went first, and he said, I would like to speak to my men one more time. It shall be granted. The lieutenant said, well, I would like to have a nice breakfast with a beautiful woman. He said, yours will be granted. The sergeant major stood up, and he said, I would like to be shot before the colonel makes his speech. And it was granted. So I hope none of you leave here today maybe thinking like my grandfathers did. But if we could go to the next slide. I got the tough part talking about the health of the force and trying to portray to you what the Army's doing. And I'm going to kind of break it into 2 things. I'm going to talk about kind of where we are and where we've been and some things we've done to identify the problems. And then I'm going to talk about kind of where we're going. And I think, from my perspective, although it might not get the best press, I think we're doing a pretty good job, and I actually think it's a good news story. However, what the Army did in 2010, if you'll notice up there, for those of you who can't see, we did a study they called the Red Book study. The Army and we're brilliant with that. The book was red, so that's why we called it the Red Book study. But we hired, if you will, a lot of experts in the field of psychology, in the field of law enforcement, in the fields of medical, and in a lot of different capacities to build a team. And we actually had a general officer that was put together in charge of that, General Corman, and she basically pulled this study together to look at the complexity of what was going on. And what we found was, in the Red Book study, there's no doubt that our generation is not facing anything different than other veterans have faced. But with the current environment, with increased deployments, to me the profound thing, or what I took out of the study, was that a typical soldier, one of those young soldiers you saw in that video, in about a 3-year period, may experience life-changing events that some of us may experience over a period of 20 or 25 years. And I'll give you an example. They move away from home, and they learn a new profession. They typically get married in their first term, maybe have a child. That's what the statistics show. They'll deploy, leave their family behind for a year at a time, and they'll probably experience some loss of some friends, some close friends. Then they'll come back, and they've changed. And now they've got to reintegrate with their family and get back to what their values were, where they came from. But those events typically happen in a soldier's first term. That's where we experience the highest rate of any kind of incident with our soldiers. After the first 3 years, once they make it through that period, what we find is that they actually gain resiliency. They actually gain the capacity to deal with those situations. It may sound somewhat, I guess you would say, as a downer to talk about these things, but I think it's important that the Army actually identified the problem and is now taking steps to go after it. Probably what you see most in the news is suicide in the military. We've typically, our suicide rate in the U.S. Army is typically maintained about that of society. It really hasn't been over that until about the past 2 years. We depict, or we understand that problem partly because there's a complexity of issues here when you study what causes a soldier to go through that. Much of those, like I talked about earlier, are those life-changing events that a soldier may go through. But what we find in the Army typically is that a soldier will have more than one of those events. When you go back and look at what actually happened, and it's no different than in society. It generally comes from, I've got a divorce, I have financial problems, I have just deployed or redeployed, I've lost soldiers, my battle buddies, I'm I'm having a tough time coping with this. Oh, and by the way, I'm back for a year and I'm going to go deploy again, so now I've got that pressure on me. We found that there are certain mechanisms that soldiers, or certain things soldiers go through that lead to that. What it comes down to is when you have all of these issues going on in a unit, it breaks down the discipline in the unit, and you'll find that soldiers go out and they commit crimes and they do other things that are not commensurate with what our society values. And so the Army leadership looked at this and said, you know, we've got to get after it. My last job, set in on briefings once about every month or so. The Vice Chief of Staff of the Army conducts a video teleconference with all of his 2-star and 3-star level commanders. And you go through basically a briefing where you talk about behaviors that are going on in units that we don't want. And we try to figure out best practices that might work to try to help resolve that. Now, what we're also finding is that when soldiers transition out of the Army, a lot of these same problems manifest themselves, and they don't just go away when they leave the Army. And the Army's concerned about that. We really are. We take it serious. So, the Red Book study, which came out about a year ago, took what we identified in the problems in the first study, and then we tried to figure out what could we do to help. Now, there are a lot of agencies. If we could go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about a few. One thing about getting old is you just can't see like you used to. So where we're going, you know, one of the things that the Army has looked at is that typically we have not done a real good job of screening our soldiers and trying to identify those that are at the highest risk. And so we have instituted where we used to kind of bring soldiers back and you just kind of went on leave and got reintegrated into the unit, and there wasn't a lot of contact with mental health professionals or medical professionals. It was basically left to the leadership in the unit, which is really the most important part of the whole process. What we found was that our screening criteria, the things we were doing, just weren't working right. So we really worked hard. Now, soldiers typically are screened with a healthcare professional throughout the process. So before you deploy, while you're deployed, before you return, when you return, and that's one of the things we're doing. Another thing we found throughout the study was that there's a stigma attached to asking for help. And if you looked at that video that I showed you up front, we're all about we don't quit, right? And that's part of our values. We don't want to go for help. And it's one of the things that we found is because of the type of person we attract in the military, they're generally not the kind of people that are going to raise their hand and say, I need some help. And it's hard to break down that stigma attached to it, but we know it's one of the things we've got to do. So, for example, some things we're doing in the military is we are relooking how we actually go about administratively, for example, looking at the health issues that soldiers might be having. So we're trying to reduce the stigma that's associated with it and tell soldiers, hey, it's okay to come forward and look for help. We're also trying to reduce the stigma amongst peers and to try to break that down. Let's see. One of the things I think that the Army has taken on as well is we have a program right now with the University of Pennsylvania where we actually send non-commissioned officers from each unit out there in the Army to the University of Pennsylvania for a 2-week program where they learn about resiliency. What they learn about is how to deal with those certain things that happen that cause one to create this stress. And at least in my opinion, it's hard to prove statistically that something's working when what you want is something not to happen. But what I've found, just talking to soldiers and talking to those that have been to the resiliency course, it really is providing a strong sense of help or a strong sense of providing someone to talk to who can help you become more resilient in what you're doing. And I think it's a great program. Something that is definitely on the Chief of Staff of the Army's mind, General Odierno, is the drawdown. There's no doubt we're going to do that. We're going to get down, we're going to shrink the numbers in the force. There's going to be some of that. And there was an article 2 days ago that General Odierno was referenced, and he said, hey, the drawdown, there's definitely angst or anxiety in the force right now. It's nothing that we haven't been through before, but it's going to add another one of those components to what the force is feeling in terms of stress. One of the other initiatives with the drawdown that the Army is looking at is how to partner with corporate enterprise, with organizations like yourself, to try to help find veterans jobs when they get out. They've done some great work on that online already. We give our soldiers, if you will, before they get out, they go through a process where we actually help them build a resume, put on clothes, go through an interview process to try to develop the skills that they need to go out and get a job out in society. And the Department of the Army, G1, has been working with a group of corporations to try to help do that. And the response that we have received as an Army throughout the United States is unbelievable. It really is. And it's greatly needed and greatly appreciated. Lastly, the lifelong support. I think that's something that, Nikki mentioned it earlier. Once a soldier, always a soldier. You always have a battle buddy. I'm in a seminar with 16 others. In our seminar, we have a soldier from Kenya, a soldier from New Zealand, a soldier from Poland. We have 2 Air Force folks, a Navy person, and a person from the State Department. One of the things our seminar did when we got together, when we first got there, is we said, hey, we got to look out for each other. While you might think that going to school at Carlisle was fun and enjoyable, if you get put on academic probation, they don't give you those coins, JT. And although I have it on good measure that he received his for getting off academic probation, but I don't want to go there. But the idea of the lifelong support is one that the Army is taking serious as well, and taking care of each other. And I think what it really comes down to, in my personal opinion, is that our Army is, we're strong, that the health of the force, yeah, there's going to be some problems, there's no doubt about that. And we're doing what we can to mitigate it. And for me, as a leader, I can tell you, there's no place I'd rather be than right here, than maybe downrange in Afghanistan leading soldiers. And that's what it's all about. And we love that. And we love facing the challenge. And I can tell you that the Army will meet the challenge, and it will be great. I was going to open it up for some question and answers if anybody has anything for me. I would like to conclude with, it really is an honor for me to be here and speak to you, each and every one of you. I mean, there's nothing that makes me get choked up more than standing over there with the veterans and feeling that sense of camaraderie. By the way, one of them mentioned, and I won't say who, hey, Army guys, anybody got a bucket of tacks? Because we could go put them in the Navy guys' chairs since we're out there first. But that's the kind of camaraderie you feel in the Army. And I would like to say that I'm proud to be here today, and I'm proud of what you do as an organization. I know y'all have been here since 1915, is when you were founded, I believe. I looked it up, read some history, and your values and your objectives, I think, are commensurate and just the same that we in the Army feel. So my hat's off to you, and I wish you the best, and thank you for having us here today.